So, what we have here is the beginning of a great era and the end of a great era. This is the 2001 Reynard that Helio Castroneves won his first IndyCar race in. And it was, of course, here at Belle Isle, Detroit. And ironically, at that time, it was the last race on Belle Isle. Of course, we're here this year with the last Belle Isle once again. But this is also the end of the era of Roger Penske building and designing his own cars. And while this in your program would have been designed, and in the record book, is described as a Reynard, it very much is a Penske designed machine. And at the time, and really still to this day, we call these Renskes. And what I'm going to do is just kind of go over this car and just kind of show off all the modifications, because essentially the only thing that's the same between a Reynard and a Renske is the tub. So we get up here to the front wing, and the front wing is very different than a stock Reynard. The nose cone's very narrow, and the front wing, particularly the end plates, this is what they called the Renske end plates. And in fact, these developments were really what kept the Reynards competitive even into the kart era, long after Team Penske left. And in fact, once they ran out of these wings, it kind of spelled the end for Reynard, because this was really the last meaningful development on this race car. Reynard went into receivership in Britain, what we call here in the States bankruptcy, in 2002, just a year after this car raced. So the side pods are the biggest tell that this is a Penske designed car. It's very similar to the PC-27B that last raced in 1999. Penske, of course, kind of totally reset after 1999. They got off the Goodyear tires, went to Firestones, got the Honda engine from the Mercedes Ilmor that they had been using, and of course went to Reynard's. But these side pods are still very much PC-27B, particularly these. For whatever reason, these kick-ups in front of the rear tires, this was Penske's kind of in-house design. I'm not really sure why. You know, again, this is not going to be necessarily a gearhead talk. I'll leave it to the comments to kind of describe what these were like or why these were the way they were. But as you can see, a fairly complex design here for 2001. You can see different winglets here, one winglet, two winglet, three winglets. You got to imagine that created a lot of downforce. And in fact, within the rules, because kart did not allow teams to build bodywork out in front of the rear tires, so creatively Penske kind of shrouded the rear tire as much as they could. You see that design much more on today's cars, where obviously they're allowed to build bodywork, or at least Dallara builds bodywork all the way out to the edges and tops of the wheels to shroud them. But of course it doesn't look very good, does it, these days? It's definitely one of the ways I would like to see the next generation of IndyCar change. I'd like to see those rear tires get exposed again. Another interesting design thing that I've noticed is the side pods, how high they come up on the chassis. That wasn't necessarily something that was common at this point in IndyCar or kart racing. Side pods were often pretty low. Now this changed in 2001 because Lola kind of copied this. They raised the side pods kind of mid-2001, and they ended up sticking with that through the rest of the time. Another interesting thing, because as you know, I've spent a lot of time at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum, and they have a couple of Reynards there, but they're 95 and 94 models. And it's amazing to me how much wider the cockpit is on this particular Reynard. And in fact, you can start to see the horseshoe, which is a safety device to help keep the driver's head a little bit more protected. Also, the cockpit sides, much more modern than a Reynard that you would see from 94 and 95, the ones that won the Indianapolis 500. And you can actually look into that cockpit, and it's really pretty wide. I mean, obviously, I don't think I would fit in there. But I mean, I think a normal-sized human would be able to get into this car and be fairly comfortable. Then you can see, of course, the custom Penske wheel Again, back in those days, you could do everything custom, and that's exactly what Penske did. Of course, there's also the mirrors, again, custom. I think on the stock Reynard, they would actually have been mounted here. On this car, they're mounted on the side pods. That's kind of a design that's carried through to the modern cars. The engine cowling, I'm pretty sure, is custom. I'd be very surprised if it's not, because it looks very much like it's very, I guess, contoured to the engine, for lack of a better word. And it doesn't really look like, your traditional Reynard engine cowling. Now, this is actually one area where teams did a lot of development work back in the day, was the engine cowling. If you ever go back to like the R-Factor mods, you can see that different teams had different engine cowlings. Pac West had a different engine cowling. Tasman had a different engine cowling. And of course, Penske, well, they have a different engine cowling. Finally, the rear wing. Yep, it's different. That's the kind of the key point about this car. Everything's different from a stock Reynard. You can just see, I think what's really cool is kind of this wicker here on the rear, where it kind of has a cutout. I find that very interesting. And this was, of course, back in the days when you could change the wickers. You could slide a wicker out through there. Let me see if I can actually get it focused there. Yeah. You could slide wickers in and out to give you a change of downforce, or change how the car was handling. It's a beautiful racing machine, and I wish they kind of looked like this again. But it's great that it's here, and it's kind of the beginning of one era, which of course was Helio Castroneves winning in IndyCar. And it's the end of the era with the ability of teams to really control what their race cars look like.